Welcome to the Tartan Touchdown, Scotland's #1 NFL podcast and Scotland's #1 flag football podcast. Now, the Tartan Touchdown has taken off, it has touched down, it has taken off again, and it has touched down again. The boys have been out in Düsseldorf. They were at the IFAF World Flag Championships. Now, I need to say a huge welcome to a number of listeners who will be joining us fresh today. You'll have caught a whole bunch of the amazing content that Dan and Gav were putting out over the World Flag Football Championships. So it has been amazing stuff. We had Dan and Gav live on the ground, bringing you, there was scores, there was player news, there was interviews with coaches, there was anything and everything else that was going on, and it was all things flag football. Now, I am your host tonight, Brian Donlan, and I am the flag novice. I am the man in the corner who, like many of you listening, might be quite new to flag football, both the concept, the sport, all of it. And I'm joined tonight by Dan and Gav, as I say, our guys out on the ground in Düsseldorf. They were live bringing you everything I mentioned earlier. And I've got Sarah with us as well, who, I find it really, really hard to quantify how into flag football Sarah is. So if anybody was in our WhatsApp group chat during the tournament, Sarah forgot how to turn caps lock off because everything got that level of enthusiasm. So it's time for us to get going. It's time to buckle up and talk about all things World Flag Championships. What's coming next in the game. And do you know what? Dan, Gav, we've really got to open up with yourselves, guys. You were our eyes on the ground in Düsseldorf, so talk us through it. What was the big stories? What was the standings? Talk us through how the tournament shaped up.
Yeah, I think before we get to the actual games themselves, Brian, something I need to say that in terms of the tournament, the setup, it was unbelievable. IFAF done an incredible job setting it all up. You hear stories like me and Gav obviously have played flag, we've been around the game a wee bit, and you hear about this flag community, right? And I don't think you realise how big it is until you're part of it. And that week last week was just incredible. Part of that whole community. And Gav made a good point, he might make it later on, is like, LA2028 is going to be great, but you're not going to have the level of access that we had to players, coaches, executives that we had last week, because it'll be so sterile in LA, you won't get that access. We could basically talk to everybody and anybody that was at that tournament last week, and it was an incredible experience from start to finish. So I just wanted to get that out there first, because before we even talk about games, that was for me one of the biggest takeaways of the tournament, was how incredible the experience of being there was. In terms of the games, from the start, it was just 100 miles an hour. That first day, Gav, I felt like there was 3 pitches there, but I felt there was 100 pitches, because we were on the go constantly trying to keep up with what was happening, what on day one, and who was doing what. Was there any shocks or any surprises? And it didn't help that it was 37 degrees more in the blaring heat as well. Gav, did it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the heat was always a big factor to the tournament, but to your point there, day one pretty much followed seeding in terms of the results, so there wasn't a great deal of surprises early on, but by God did that change as the tournament went on. I mean, obviously, we probably don't want to do a full game-by-game recap, but day two, one of the big stories was American Samoa giving American men their first defeat in 14 years, and it wasn't just like a plucky final play. Bowens led that game from beginning to end pretty much. There were 2 scores up in the final 30 seconds. Game was in the bag. I mean, that was one that really stood out as the big upset. We'll get into. There's some teams that really surprised us pleasantly. Germany as hosts, I think, have bounced back after a couple of down tournaments. And I mean, obviously, Great Britain, I think, I think some of the squad and the female side, they'll be feeling, I guess, I don't think disappointed, heartbroken is probably more accurate, just given how close they were to clinching that Olympic berth. But by God, did they play the world's top nations so close? USA, Mexico, and had those 2 games to qualify for Olympics. I think they showed that they really do belong at the world's top table, and it's only a matter of time before they lock up that Olympic slot.
Yeah, before we even got to that, Gav, I feel like the GB women set the tone out for their first game against France. Like, we were only sure, we thought maybe a bit of a tricky game. We thought they should win it. They were that first half, they absolutely controlled it. 3 interceptions that resulted in scores, and they just completely controlled that whole first half against France. Second half, they came out, the game was under control. France put up a couple of scores, but there was never any danger of losing that game. China game was like, that was touch and go the whole way. The China game, they held on and got the win at the end, but that could have went either way. The Chinese were fairly impressive the way they played that game, especially. Anyway, I think the rest of their performances didn't. probably live up to their expectations. So GB get a good win there. And then the game we all thought was going to be a bit of a banana skin for the women was the Austria game, which turned out to be who was going to win the group and who was going to get a number one seed. And I think we never seen the game live on the ground. We were watching it on the telly because it was that NFL meeting at the time. And Austria just didn't get going. Like, we're used to Austria pushing GB right to the limit. And I don't know what happened. Well, maybe it may have just been our women just kind of schemed for them and played them amazingly, but Austria just didn't get going on the women's side of the draw. So women won the group, which was great. For the men, coming into the tournament, GB men, we've got very much of a learning experience for these guys. A lot of rookies on the team, especially on defence as well. 3 guys have now played flag in the defence, plus we've got Christian at quarterback who's been playing flag for I think 4 or 5 months now. So it was very much a learning experience for the GB men. They did go 0-3 in the group, but put up some decent performances in that. But then when it came to the tail end of it, when they had the big games in the kind of bracket, they beat Austria and then they beat Brazil to finish 13th, which they went into the tournament as the 12th seed. So they did drop one spot, which may look like a bit of a disappointment, but considering the rookies that we had on the team, the learning experience, I think it's a fairly decent result for the GB men. I think those last 2 performances and getting those wins, looking forward, is what you want. You want to finish the tournament with wins, and I think they've got a lot of positives coming out of that men's team going forward, and hopefully they can build that going forward.
Yeah, and I suppose there's so many incredible stories that came out of the tournament all in. And as I say, I'll be honest with everybody listening, I'm very much a casual fan of flag. I'm not somebody that spent forever following it. I'm not like Dan and Gav, who've played, they've played the game. I'm not like Sarah, who has spent so much time getting invested in the stories and the teams and following this game so closely. So I suppose one of the big questions that everybody like me really has, what are the big differences when we look at flag? When we think about flag versus tackle football, what differentiates the two sports? Now, one of the things that I observed, one of my big observations, was the amount of finesse that flag has. Now, there's the classic saying in the NFL, offense wins games, defense wins championships. In flag playing, defense is hard. You can't, we see it in the NFL all the time. And I'm not taking away from big physical players because it's a talent all in itself. But see, when you're massive, you get to just leather somebody from time to time and just completely wipe them out. You can't do that in flag. That's not how it works. So talk us through it. You guys have all got such amazing backgrounds with the sport. And there's a lot of people out there, and we've seen it in some of the comments we got for some of your guys' content, where people think flag's a daft game. And it's not. It's a major, growing global sport. So talk us through, what are the things that differentiate flag from tackle football, and what are some of the things that really make flag special? Now, say this is the sneaky bit. Before we came on air, Sarah was making a really amazing point about how competitive and how full on, really specifically, women's flag is. And it was something, and I'll no mention spoilers for the very end and who won bits of the tournament. But I made the comment when we were watching it and we're chatting away. I was like, the guys' final was a bit of a doing. It was quite one-sided. The women's final was so competitive, and it did show you something that was really special about the women's side of flag, specifically on top of flag v tackle as well. So I don't know, Sarah, what do you kind of look at as the big differences between flag and tackle generally, and I suppose maybe more with the women's side of it as well? What makes it so special?
So without stating the obvious about how you can't tackle, right? Because I feel like that's the obvious, is the main difference, is there's no tackling. You can't slam somebody down to the ground. I think for me, a big difference between the games is how quick flag is. Obviously, flag is shorter. It's 20 minutes a half, right? So that's already quicker than what you're going to play in an NFL or a traditional tackle football game. But it's so fast. That is none of this stop, let's fully reset, let's start again. Even though they do run the clock and they've got 25 seconds to make a play, it's so fast. There is no dilly-dally about. And it was amazing to watch the difference in some of the teams and who took their time actually slowing the game down and who just went balls to the walls basically and just said, we're going to go. Because I noticed it in the GB Panama game, as Panama were really wanting to control it and keep moving it as they wanted to. But then GB women would have it back and they would just start going for it because they were like, we just want to rack up the points. So it's interesting in kind of that sense. And I guess the thing I like most about female flag football and this is maybe just a general, but I think it's a sport that really alludes to women. I think it's just the way they're kind of maybe slightly on the like athletic side, they're a bit more nimble. Like you can see them doing some really insane nimble moves to get out, because obviously part of it is it's multi-directional, it's quick changing. And I don't know if it's because, you know, women maybe tend to be better dancers or whatever it is. For example, like we just tend to be able to move slightly quicker than men do, especially like and obviously your flags sit kind of around your hips and your waist area. So if you can move those a bit quicker, then you tend to be okay with moving about. And also, like, again, there's maybe the height thing that comes into it. So obviously if you're a wide receiver in the NFL, you want to be quite tall, you want to be quite thin, but maybe that's not the best for flag. You maybe want to be slightly shorter and slightly a bit more in the kind of elude kind of way. Like, I don't know. Those are my main things for me about why it makes it different and why it makes it special, because it's not, I feel like everybody always says the NFL and tackle football's so slow, and I'm like, it's not, but flag football's quicker.
And I can, on behalf of men everywhere now, yeah, my body does not move that way. No, if I did that, I would damage something quite significant. And do you know what? The speed aspect of it is something, and I was contemplating going back through the WhatsApp to try and find your comment, as you had a really snarky moment at one point during one of the games when you were complaining about the clock. And it was like, this isn't long enough. And, you know, we're all used to that. You know, you fire on NFL Sunday and, you know, you've either got 7 hours worth of red zone or you've got a game at a time that's 3 hours worth of a broadcast. And yeah, I mean, the NFL does get the rap of being a game that's very slow and ponderous. And, you know, fans know the difference, that it's explosive and short bursts and what have you. But flags get that quite sustained intensity that goes on, and it does make, Gavin, you were kind of mentioning stuff about how interesting it is with how teams actually deal with that very specific aspect of flag, and how different it is. Managing your time is really hard because it's a limited resource.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a short game, and I mean, you think about the NFL, and you know, there's been sort of famous comebacks. You know, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, you know, springs to mind. But actually, you know, in flag football, with the shorter field, that's even more of a concern. The World Games last year, I say what left something like 26 seconds on the clock after scoring a go-ahead touchdown. Mexico were still able to drive and get the win, and you could see that was affecting. You know, I think certainly the US themselves had long memories, but that is something we spoke to with some of the other coaches who are watching games on the sideline, is how much time are you willing to leave on the clock before you're comfortable thinking, I can hand this over to my defense? Because, you know, there are quarterbacks both on the men and the women's side that are capable of throwing the ball the length of the field. So all you need to do is give a single play and that other team will have a shot. And then, as we saw with Australia against Samoa, some very creative tip drill plays as well to help get it downfield. Yeah, I think that's the thing. The game really isn't over until it's over, and that absolutely factored into the women's gold medal match. The US came up just short, but that was a very carefully executed drive. I think they had their final play with 2 seconds on the clock. They knew that they were either going to tie it up, hopefully get the conversion, or that was going to be game over. Canada were never getting the ball back. So it's a huge factor of the sport, and yeah, something that just keeps it really, really exciting right to the end.
Yeah, it really, really is. Because as you say, it's such a limited resource, but then you marry it up with the field size, you marry it up with the pace of play, and it's just such an interest. It's like a catch-22. It's not going to take me very long to score, but by the same token, means it's not going to take them very long to score either. So if, you know, we see it in the NFL all the time, you know, you depend on your defense making the stop, and they'll have 2, 3, 4 chances a drive more often than not to do that. Flag, you don't get it. And I suppose, Dan, thinking about that defensive side, yeah, and it is thinking about, because we spoke so much during the tournament about how athletic, how fit, and, you know, the types of things, as Sarah mentioned earlier, that these players, they can do with their body, that I suppose me saying earlier that the NFL, it's got that more physicality to it. It's not really true, in a sense, that the physicality differences are there, but it's not about one's physical and one's finesse. The physicality in both is just really different, isn't it?
Yeah, so over this last week, I kind of got this thing where flag football is a non-contact sport, but it's a very physical sport. And I think a good example of that was a GB USA game where there was not a single flag thrown in the whole game, but both those teams went at each other, and there was a good bit of contact between the teams, but the refs let it go because none of it was bad contact. None of it was just girls going up against each other and tackles or going up against each other on plays. And I loved that, to see that happening. But on the other side, there was some games you're watching where flags were getting thrown just because people were flopping, and that's something I think it needs to get kind of taken out of the game. There's been a lot of flopping, and people just, the slightest bit of contact and they're falling down looking for a flag. That's something that needs to be looked at. I don't know how you do it, but I love the fact that the USA Women's GB game, they let it be physical and they let the players go at each other, and there was a bit of contact as long as it didn't cross the line, which I loved that. And to watch, sitting on the sideline watching that, and everybody around about me loved that as well. I think after the end of the game, we all said there was not a single flag on that play. We spoke to Brian Kelly, who was kind of the IFAF head of referees for the tournament, and he's like, that's great, but we need the consistency. So he says that's the way we want the games to be refereed, but they're just not getting that consistency across all the games, which is what he says they're really working to. So physicality of the game was phenomenal to watch, and allowing that contact to happen as long as it wasn't over the edge. So yeah, so it's not as physical as the NFL. People are going to drag people to the ground and stuff like that, but there was a lot of contact, and I felt that made the games a lot better.
Right, you heard it here first, folks. Sports fans concerned about refereeing consistency. I'm glad you are all here with me to share that mic drop moment. It is a thing, though, and as you say, Dan, having the consistency, letting the players play the game. And yeah, it's within the bounds of the laws of the game and all the rest of it. So, yes, there's rules, but letting them be athletes, letting them physically compete with one another, it's one of the things that made the tournament so special. So there we go, folks. There's some of them. Obviously, there are more. We can do lots of deep dives into the differences of the rules. God knows Gav has tried to make me deep dive into the rules differences between flag and tackle football more than once. I'm pretty sure he sent me a book one time. I believe you. So it helps make them both incredible in both sports in their own really special way. Now, this show is all about flag football and the Flag World Championships. And as we said, you guys were there. You were our eyes in the ground, our eyes in the end zone at one point, Dan. We seen you on TV. We seen you playing keepy-uppy with a wayward pass. Dan's trying to get himself scouted for kick returns. So, and we had really interesting bits where we had that great change, or that great kind of mix of perspectives where we had Dan and Gav live, pitch side, watching things, and then Sarah, much more than me, messaging Sarah, who is hundreds of miles away, saying, how did that play actually go? Because, someone's blocking my view and you get a totally different set of it. So it's brilliant, and there was such a great set of experiences there, both watching the games, meeting the players, meeting the staff, all of these things, and that community aspect that you talked about at the top of the show as well, Dan. So I suppose for everybody, guys, what are your big memories? What are your standout moments of the tournament? What are the things where you look at and you go, that was incredible, be it interacting with players and staff, be it a performance? What are some of the things you look at and you go, that team's going to reflect in that result, they're going to reflect in that performance and think we left something in the locker room? What are some of the big stories from the World Championships in Düsseldorf?
I think for me to start with, we done the media day on Wednesday, where basically it was like a kind of red carpet idea. We were behind a barrier and players and teams, and you got to just grab anybody you wanted to talk to. And Gav, I know you've got a record somewhere. I've lost count of how many people we spoke to, how many people we interviewed. And just what for me is like talking to players, and they're like, "Oh, we've seen you before, we've seen your content, or we follow you." That blew my mind. Do you know what I mean? When you had people saying that to you on the ground, you're just like, really? And Gav's getting interviewed players, like getting them to follow us on Instagram. They're already following us and stuff like that. That media day was an incredible experience, just to speak to so many people we spoke to get the chance to speak to Diana Flores. That was just unbelievable. We got to speak to the US men's. We got anybody. I want to give a shout out to Ryan, the director of comms for USA here. Anything we asked him for this week, he gave us. Any player we wanted to speak to, he's like, yep, you can have them. Everybody in that community was so welcoming to us, and that media day just set that up for us. We'd never done anything like this before. We knew a few people on the ground for GB and stuff like that, and by the IFAF teams, but everybody just basically opened it up and let us in open arms and were wanting to talk to us and tell their story. So that set the tone for the whole week for us, for me, and that made me think, well, yeah, this is going to be great, because I didn't know what to expect when you're out there for the first time. You don't know how things work and what the setting is. So that media day for me just set the whole tone for us as a podcast at that tournament, and I absolutely loved it. In terms of performances, you probably all we fed up with talking about it. Our friend of our show, Sarah Parker, just absolutely ran the show. Like, the best quarterback in the women's game, possibly best quarterback in flag football at the moment, full stop. She was incredible. Absolutely unfazable. Nothing gets to it at all. I asked a couple of her teammates, like, how? She's like, she's just locked in. She just knows what she's doing. She just focuses on it. And we eventually, after they won, so we've not talked about the results yet, but so after Canada women won the championship, you seen that wee chink in that armour during their interview. She kind of let the emotions come out a wee bit, which we've never seen from her before, which was lovely to see. But for me, standout performance of the tournament was her.
Yeah, love the fact, because so obviously when, like, Brian, you mentioned that how, like, Dan and Gav were there on the ground, and obviously I'm watching it at home, and like me and Dan are both talking back and forth between the two of us about Sarah specifically, and how, like, I can see it on TV and on film that she is fully in control. Nothing bothers her, nothing phases her. And that's also reading in person. Like, she is a totally different breed. Like, I cannot sing her praises enough. Like, I just think she's also so cool. Like, she's such a wonderful role model for the sport, for female flag football players, because she's so hardworking, and she's always like, I'm here because of the people that have put me to this position. She's always like so thankful for like our opportunities and everything. And they were just unbelievable. Like, watching every single game that Team Canada women were doing, they were unstoppable. Like, I knew it the minute they went all the way through in their group. I went, they're probably going to win it. Like, it was so amazing to watch, and it just proves for the women's side in particular, the top dogs are no longer unbeatable, because it was always Team USA and Team Mexico were the two to beat. But now you've got a third party in the mix, and you do have Team GB in the mix as well. And there will be other teams that over the next year will get better when they come to the Continentals for the remaining like Olympic berths. And it's just going to be amazing to see what happens over the next 2 years in the women's like league in particular. The men's have a bit of a work to do, but that makes sense as to where flag football originates from. But yeah, like Team Canada women were unbelievable. Like, I loved every single second of watching them.
And I think it's really important to remember that, you know, every team at this tournament is on a slightly different timeline. I think, absolutely, obviously, Canada coming away with the gold medal, I don't think anyone would dispute that they more than deserved it. It's worth saying, though, that perhaps one of the other stories of the tournament was US women's quarterback Higa, who is only 17 years old. Reluctant to call her a rookie because she's been part of the USA football setup for several years already. But this was her first year as QB1 for America Women. And the Americans came short. I will be honest, I thought right up until that final play that USA would do it, she was a huge part of that drive. The quickness of her release, she's getting balls on the sideline, allowing the team to stop the clock and get as much time as possible for one final shot. She's so composed under pressure with the blitz. She doesn't look to scramble. She'll just simply sidestep you and keep her eyes continuously locked downfield at those US receivers. So I think as much as, you know, the US team will be disappointed. I mean, it's been said by several people, anything that's not gold, you know, they don't want to know about, but they do have a real platform to build on with the new quarterback, and that's really exciting. I think maybe on the men's side, we talked about Samoa already. They finished top 5. And I think as a team, I have absolute confidence that they'll be looking to get a place in LA over the next 24 months. But one other team that not just myself, but a number of the players at the tournament really talked about was Japan. Japan were a big surprise package. 2 years ago, their men's side finished outside of the top. And this one, you know, they took the US men's team again right down to the wire. So they were one of these programs that's come a long way in a short period of time. And, you know, you talked about, you know, the standard of competition is rising. And like I say, everyone's on a different timeline. I don't think anybody expected to see this year. But the fact that you've got, you know, 12 months to Continentals, and then obviously the final Olympic qualifying series in early 2028. That's a team that I'd be looking to peak.
Yeah, I think just other reflections on the tournament. Like, I want to just throw one other team in there, Gav. I said I'm not going to talk any more teams, but Germany women are forced to watch in Europe. Germany women are they're on the up. GB, I kind of mentioned them Austria not performing to their highest level. Obviously, they need to watch. Germany are going to be, I feel Germany are going to be GB's biggest threat at the Continentals next year now, because they were unbelievable. Really young players in that team that played out there, and they're only going to get better. So that's my last reflections on teams. About the tournament in general, I've seen, Brian, you mentioned earlier, like sitting at the end of the end zones watching games. What I loved about this tournament was we could watch a game from so many different perspectives. So the first couple of days they were a bit not as strict about where you stood watching the games. So you got a good perspective of watching on the sideline or behind the end zone. Me and Gav several times just went and sat in the crowd and watched the games with the crowd just to get a different angle and stuff like that. And the atmosphere, the Germany, I think it was the Germany Austria, Gav, or Germany Switzerland, that night in game with the crowd, it was unbelievable. We were watching GB on one pitch, and on pitch, the other pitch, the place was bouncing. There was a DJ, the music was loud. To watch flag football be played in that setting with that atmosphere just blew my mind. I'm just like, this is a sport I played in a public park with cones 20 years ago, and now we've got this. It absolutely blew my mind just watching this happening, to be part of that happening. And that's one of the things I loved about this tournament was just being there and experiencing it and watching these players playing at that level. It blows my mind at the level this sport's been playing at and the level of athletes we have got playing this sport now. It's incredible. And this is to think, this is only the beginning of what flag football could possibly be. And if this is the starting point, what's going to happen in the future is going to be scary. What we're going to see going forward between pro leagues, between the NFL with tomorrow sports, between the Olympics, this sport's just going to, it's already exploded, but it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the players and the athletes are just going to get better and better and better. We think we've seen the best athlete to play of all time already. I don't think we've even touched it. I think the level of athletes that are still to come in this sport are going to blow away anything that anybody's ever done in this sport before, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just going to say, Brian, sorry, I think it's, you're right, off the field there's so many elements. You talk about the Olympics and the sort of I guess the looming professionalisation of the sport. Obviously, having the players and the coaching talent to enable that is key, but actually another big part of that in terms of how you take that to a mass audience is the fans. And for a number of years now, IFAF has been excellent at giving access to streams. I mean, the World Championships in 24, one of the reasons that I really got back into the sport was being able to follow every single game on a live stream, a high quality live stream at that. But this time round, it's not just that. Yes, every game's on YouTube. Had major networks carrying the tournament globally. It was Sky Sports in the UK, but we had ESPN Mexico. We're covering the tournament. RTL were doing it for German speaking countries within Europe. So there's a lot of exposure in that regard. But another big piece, and Dan touched on it, but I can't emphasize this enough, is actually the crowd and the fans. So I think the official numbers we got was a little over 20,000 fans actually turned out for the tournament as a whole. And I think being in Central Europe certainly helped with that, because the Germans absolutely brought the fan numbers. But I mean, the Swiss, I've got to shout them out. The Swiss were really one of the stars of the show. Austria brought a whole load of fans. We saw people travelling from Holland and France. But even further afield, Mexico brought big numbers. America brought big numbers. Even Samoa, they had their supporters there too. The longer this goes on, and when the likes of myself and Dan come away with this, I mean, we have some inklings about where next year's Continentals are going to be, although an official announcement is still yet to come. I would be strongly advocating, certainly for the four of us and anyone else that's watched this as we did over the past couple of years and looked at these tournaments, thought this looks incredible. I've got to say, if you think it looks great on a stream, if you've got the means, make the effort and try and get yourself out. As I say, we'll have the details shortly, and we'll be sharing that.
Absolutely. And there's so much exciting stuff to look forward to in the world of flag. Now, the tournament in Düsseldorf, it was really incredible. And one of the things, you guys have spoken about so many things that made it fantastic. But there is one carrot that was there, that was the big carrot of them all. And we've already mentioned it, we've name dropped it loads of times, but at the end of the day, was there an IFAF World Championship up for grabs? Absolutely. Team USA men, Team Canada women, incredible performances to wrap that up. There were also 4 Olympic berths up for grabs. The big prize of the Düsseldorf games, getting that opportunity to take your nation to that truly global stage. Dan, you talk so much about how flag's exploding. It's growing as a game. My God, we ain't seen nothing yet, because it's going to hit the Olympics. And, you think global audience? That's a global audience. So it is officially locked in for the Olympic Games. So everybody, let's wind this up. Let's look ahead. Let's think, who are our big confirmed powerhouse? Who are you looking at going, right, okay, my word, you're going to take some beating? Who are those dark horses? But bring everybody in. Bring people like me into your sneaky secrets that you lot keep in the inside. Who are the countries that maybe they didn't have a great World Championships in Düsseldorf, but my God, you're thinking the next steps for you are incredible. And with wee bit of work, wee bit of refocus, wee bit of grit and determination, you can be looking to LA to really showcase yourself and take the next big step.
Yeah. So, we start off with the teams that are already there. So USA qualified automatically as host nations. So no matter where they finished the World Championships, they were going. Them getting to the final of both sides of the draw meant that the bronze medal match was for an Olympic qualifying place now as well. So on the men's side of the draw, so obviously you mentioned Brian, USA won it. Italy finished second, so they, by winning their semi-final, they got a qualifying place for the Olympics, and then Team Canada finished third. So we've got USA, Mexico and Canada so far for the men's side of the draw. On the women's side of the draw, as you mentioned, Canada won it. They beat USA in the final. Mexico beat GB by 1 point in their bronze medal match, so they secured their spot as well. What I do is give a shout out. I've never seen the scenes that I've seen when Italy won their semi-final. The emotions on that sideline were incredible. And I'm not saying every team that qualified, all emotional, all celebrated, but the Italian men, when they won that semi-final, the scenes on the sideline were unbelievable to watch. But that's your teams that are locked in. For those that kind of don't know the path of what happens next. So basically we'll go into the Continentals next year. So the IFAF Continentals will cover off. Next year we've got Asia and Oceania as two separate Continentals. That's the plan at the moment. And you've got Europe and the Americas and stuff like that as well. So the top two in each of those tournaments will go to the Q Series qualifiers, which are in Montreal and LA in 2028. So if you finish first or second in your Continentals, you have a shot at the Olympics. So that's kind of where we're at the moment in terms of how that path looks going into 2027. For me, let's start on the women's side of the draw. I feel that GB women are the favourites for that to get to LA. I feel the fact that Canada, USA, Mexico are out of the equation for them, I think they've got to look at as a favourite. They finished fourth the tournament, so by theory they should be the favourites, but watching them play, they pushed USA and Mexico to the absolute limit. And Gav made a good point. GB women were beaten by Mexico by 20 points this time last year. Mexico hung on by the skin of their teeth to beat GB in that game, in that bronze medal match. So I feel that GB women are up there. Germany is the other team. I've mentioned them already. I think they're going to be the biggest threats. Depends on where the draw happens for the Euros. If it's GB, I would expect GB and Germany to be in the final. Gav, for you on the women's side of the draw, outside of Europe, who else would you expect? Obviously, we can talk about who you think will make it through the Continentals, but who do you expect to have a real shot at that Q Series?
So I think, without trying to sound like I'm sitting on the fence too much, one thing we've learned from this tournament is that everyone is fired up. I think that the fact that the Olympics is now a possibility. I mean, if I'm honest, I probably didn't give enough respect to Panama. I thought GB would be very comfortable against them, and that was not the case whatsoever. They really pushed our women hard. And similarly, we saw Spain, who they're number 3 in Europe. They're certainly a very solid team coached by Kenny Bello, but certainly I wouldn't have put them in consideration against the top nations. But again, by God, did they take Mexico down to the wire in their quarterfinal. But I think probably one of the nations we've not spoken about yet that probably deserves our attention is China. Now, China started the tournament first day 0-2 and already eliminated from the main tournament, which would have been very disappointing for them. They did not lose a single game after day one. They went through all their opposition. Obviously, they won the remaining group. They basically won, I guess, what you call the consolation bracket to get a 9th place finish, which is only going to help them in the rankings. So we've got to bear in mind that China, I think they were ranked something like 17th or 18th in the world coming into this tournament. Part of that is because they only got a year of form under the belt. They've already won a continental championship. They registered a victory over Japan at the World Games last year, and now they've got multiple victories under the belt at this World Championship, and crucially more experience against playing at the world's top teams. This is a squad that a lot wasn't known about them prior to them taking the field, but one thing we do know is that they have invested a lot in this program. They live together. They have Patrick Alley, who is alumni of Team USA football, coaching them both on the men's and the women's side. So I would firmly expect them to be in the mix over the next couple of years to get an LA spot.
Yeah, it's exciting to see where these teams are going. Like China, like till World Games last year, nobody really knew much about China, and suddenly good, decent performance at World Games, won the Continentals, and now suddenly we're talking about they could be a chance, because you would expect them to go back, and the way the Continentals are going to be split in Asia and Oceania, a team that maybe probably could have done better and maybe will do better going into the Continentals is Australia. I feel that again, but then they've now got America Samoa. America Samoa's women were at this tournament, but the Oceania qualifiers, they're going to be there. And from the money that's getting flung into that programme, because it's Tua Tagovailoa's family that are running that programme. So basically his foundation is pumping the money into running that programme. So they're going to have the money behind them. So on the women's side of the draw, I would expect to see that as well. So Sarah, what about on the men's side of the draw? What's your thoughts on going into next year in 2028?
I don't know. So I think the men's is difficult, right? Because I think there's a lot of teams that we know or we have known before who are good, but there's loads of like young talent coming through some of these men's teams. So I don't actually think I think the men's is quite difficult to narrow down. Apart from, we all think American Samoa are probably going to be in the running for one of those remaining Olympic berths. I don't think that. I think they've proved it because they've bet the top dogs in USA. But I don't know. I think it's difficult for men, and I don't actually think I think Mexico will be one to probably qualify. I think they're probably disappointed they didn't qualify in this round for the men's. So I could see Mexico making it through. I could probably see American Samoa going through. And obviously they were the only overtime game in that bronze match between the men's, wasn't it? Was with Canada and Mexico. They were only overtime. So they are obviously in with the tops. But I don't know, really, like a kind of Europe. I don't know what's the kind of scope looking like in Europe right now. I think they're all quite, apart from obviously Italy, because they're obviously qualified. But I think Europe's pretty wide open.
Yeah, I think you mentioned there about young talent, and GB obviously finished 13th in this tournament, but bear in mind they finished 4th at the Euros last year. This GB team, we've had these conversations kind of over text messages. This GB team, they made a decision this year to be fresh, bring the rookies in and give them the experience of playing at a World Championships. What you'll find with a lot of the European teams, the Swiss, the Austrians, the French, the Italians to an extent as well, the Germans, a lot of these players will age out over the next 2 years. GB have now bodied their youngsters, so come the next Euros or the next World Championships, they're going to have to field their rookies that have never played at that level. GB made the decision, let's make that change now and focus on that. And I'll tell you something, that GB defence is going to be solid. Rieke, Jaden, Frost, the guys are, like, especially Jaden and Rieke especially, they're two of them are going to be mainstays in that GB men's defence for years to come. The two of them just read the game unbelievably, and they've got 5 or 6 players that are 22 and under. Those are the future of GB men. How that translates into the Euros next year is going to be interesting to see, because they're going to have another year together as training, going to camps and getting used to each other. But we'll see how that goes, because you've got people at the other end of the team, the vets, that maybe are any of them going to stay on, or any of them going to go side. It's time to move on. So I think GB men finishing 4th last year, that refresh, could they push themselves on a wee bit? Be interesting to see in terms of the Euros. Would love them to see them do it, but talking to people around the camp, their aim is 2032. They're looking at Brisbane in 2032. That's obviously, they're not saying they're not going to try and get there, but they're like, we've made this change now to this team, to give this team 4 or 5 years to build together towards qualifying for 2032 in Brisbane. Another team, and Gav mentioned them already on the men's side of the draw, is Japan. They're just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. I would probably expect Japan, I don't know if they've got much competition in that Asia bracket now anyway. I'd expect Japan to go and win that Asian bracket for the men as well. So that would be 2 picks. I would say Japan would be one of my favourites to qualify on the men's side for LA.
Yeah, I think the one programme we probably it'll be interesting to watch over the next 12 months, both for the men and the women, is Austria. So I think have been really one of the mainstays, the final 4 of several tournaments. I mean, for the men, first of all, 2023, 2024, 2025, silver medals every time. Austria's women also, again, mainstays getting to semi-final stages of major tournaments. So in the men's case, we know that they had lost their QB1 prior to the tournament. They had an injury to their QB at the tournament. So, I mean, obviously, most important position in the game, that's going to be a factor. And similarly with the women, they qualified from the group in day one, but really after that, they struggled at times. And I certainly don't see any reason why they can't bounce back, but I guess it's going to be a question mark as to how quickly they can turn it around.
Just before you wrap up, Brian, on this segment, just one other shit I want to go, and it was unfortunate we never got to see them this week, so we can't form an opinion on them, is Nigeria. So if anybody doesn't know, Nigeria had qualified, they were the African champions. It was an issue with their visas, so they never got to come to the tournament. They could have put on a few shows for some people, so it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from this going into the Continental next year. I know they have got a bit of a challenge. I think Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia are 3 countries that are really trying to top for that bit in Africa, so we'll see how Nigeria bounce back from the disappointment of not being at the Worlds, because I was really looking forward to seeing how that sport has progressed in that continent. So that's one to watch going into next year to see how that all plays out.
Definitely. There's so much to look forward to. There's so much that's going to be coming in the world of the flag. It's incredible. There's so much to get excited about. Well, Dan, Sarah, Gav, it's been incredible. Dan, Gav, thank you guys so much for your stellar work out in Düsseldorf. I loved following it. I know our listeners, everybody that's following us in the socials, that they absolutely loved following you guys too. So you gents, thank you both so much for that. Sarah, thank you for your incredible work in the studio. I've decided that you're effectively, I'm trying to think of a Sky Sports pundit to kind of frame you as, and I'm failing miserably.
I'm Phoebe. See, I was to start out. Yeah, I'm Phoebe. That's basically what it lies down to. But yeah, just off the background of what you're saying about thanking obviously Dan and Gav for obviously going out and I guess I just want to say thank you for promoting and showcasing us in such a good light. Obviously we all have access to our socials, so I get to see all the nice comments coming in from everybody being like, oh my god, it was so nice to meet you, and it was so nice to put obviously they know our faces because we obviously were on the content and stuff, but it was just nice for them to be appreciative, and I know they all are. They all love the fact that we're doing this and we're highlighting their sport, but it's so nice to hear the feedback that what we're doing is important and that they appreciate it as much as we obviously love doing it. So yeah, just thanks for continuing to put us out there in a positive light. It's always good. And again, I said this in our chat, I will be at the Euros. I've put my hands up. I've actually promised several people that I'll be at the Euros. So if I'm not there, heads will roll, basically. Y'all can go the other ones, but I'll go at the Euros. I'll go at the Euros.
Just on the topic of thanks to you guys for supporting us back here, obviously, as well, and kind of keeping us up to date with everything that's going on and just generally being part of the support team that we had while we're out there. I feel like I need to put a few thank yous out there. It feels like a bit of an Oscar acceptance speech here, but there's a few things I think need to be said based on this. As I mentioned earlier on, this was our first time doing anything like this. I want to thank every person, a member of the media, from the teams to IFAF to everybody that was there, that making us feel welcome, making us kind of give us pointers, tell us how everything worked, and just basically being on the ground with us. And the team for the What the Flag podcast, Yaz, Owen, Phoebe, Kenny, Blessing, they were brilliant. We spent a lot of time with you guys across the week, and it was just so much fun spending time with other people doing what we do and loving what we do and sharing that passion. And there was many late nights in the hotel just sitting talking about flag football. I can't even say we were drinking, we were just literally sitting talking about flag football. That's 2 a.m. Our alarms are going off at 6, we better get to bed. That was every night, and it was so, I said at the start, just part of that community. It was so welcome and it felt amazing. IFAF put in a phenomenal tournament. To Catherine and her team at IFAF, Michael and the guys and stuff like that. Amazing. All the volunteers that made the tournament happen. We built so many relationships with volunteers, keeping us in check, making sure we're in the right place at the right time, telling us off when we're standing in the wrong places and doing things like that as well. It was just incredible. And to every player, coach, exec, media person that took time to talk to us and give us their time and tell their story and basically give us the opportunity to tell those stories, we appreciate it more than you will ever know. So thank you for that.
You mentioned it. I liked your little mention earlier about how you managed to sneak your way to NFL Germany.
We never even talked about that.
I know you never even talked about that. I know. You can talk about it right now if you're thanking people.
We'll do a wee quick sum up. So for those that don't know, we went to an NFL Germany event, and I'm going to sit here right now and say we started the conversation about getting an NFL game in Scotland. I spoke to the right people. I spoke to the EVP of NFL International. And I spoke to her and I said, we wanted an NFL game in Scotland. But more importantly, I told them we want flag football kits in schools in Scotland. That was my main point to them. I said, we need to grow this sport in Scotland. The NFL teams that have their market rights in the UK are very London-centric, focused in the south of London. Some of them kind of move up, nothing in Scotland. So that's something we had a good conversation. I spent about 15 minutes with these guys talking about it and trying to kind of push flag football in Scotland. Obviously, the NFL game would be the pinnacle, but it needs to start somewhere. And in Ireland and Australia, it started by getting these flag football kits in schools. That's what I want us to do. I want us to kind of push that and get flag football accessible to everybody in Scotland, because it's only going to help the national team going forward and grow this sport even more. So that's the NFL Germany in a nutshell. We'll happily talk about it in more detail in another day, but it was a phenomenal
If somebody
event.
buys him a drink, then you can listen to
You have to buy me a drink, I'll just tell you. I'll sit at a bar, I'll just tell anybody that wants to hear about that event how good it was to hear flag football being talked at that level by the NFL. It was incredible. Sorry, I just forgot one more thank you. Tomorrow Sports allowed us access to speak to the GOAT, Vanita Crouch. That short interview we had with her will be dropping over the next few days. That was incredible, and thank you to Vanita for taking the time, because she's a busy woman, busy at that too, on demand, took her time to chat to us. So thank you to her and Tomorrow Sports for that. I'm done.
Right, no, this is where I'm Captain Misery and saying, right, no, I'm stopping you before Dan starts to thank the Academy.
No, I'm like, does Gav have any thanks?
And one more thing, one other thing, one more. No, unfortunately, everybody, we do now need to draw things to a close, but it is time to look ahead. Now, we are right in the thick of NFL preseason. Flag has been and will continue to be amazing to us. We are going to keep following every single one of these teams' journey through the Continentals all the way to LA2028 and beyond. But the NFL regular season is right around the corner. Make sure that you stay tuned to the Tartan Touchdown, your home of NFL coverage in Scotland. Our season previews are going to be dropping over the coming weeks. You can look forward to hearing why I am correct about how every division is going to play out, and these three have not a clue what they're talking about, unless, of course, they agree with me, which is the obvious correct choice. So remember, stay tuned, keep listening, hit that follow button, hit that like button. Wherever you get your podcasts, that is where you will find us. You can find us on any social media channel you care to check. Like it, subscribe it. Until next time, I have been Brian Donlan. We have been the Tartan Touchdown. Thank you so much, and we will catch you in the next one.